Okay, this video is in response to a question I get on a regular basis, at least once a month. And that's, what can you do if you're part of a small group or you're by yourself, but you don't want to give up, you want to keep fighting, or you want to resist? So I don't think I've covered this subject in the past for actual operations. I know I've covered it from a training aspect, how you can train even as an individual to be better prepared for if something happens. You're not always going to be 100% prepared. You just want to be a little bit better than the next guy. So I decided, let's throw this together and throw out some ideas. This will fall under Fieldcraft, resistance operations as a small group or an individual. Small group, I'm talking fire team and below. So say a max of 5 to 6 people. Now, I have put a lot of thought into this over the years because there has been times when I was on my own. There would have been no one there to assist me if anything were to occur. And one thing you must always keep in your mind, especially when you are doing something like this, because, the shit has hit the fan, an enemy has invaded the country, you're overrun, you're behind the lines. The Antichrist has taken over and he's using his shock troops to round people up. Trust me, I've been asked the same question in pretty much any different fashion that you can think of. Always keep in your mind, accept you likely won't survive, but make it your goal that the enemy will always have nightmares about you for the rest of their lives. That's why I have that at the bottom. Now, first off, you're always going to have to be constantly alert. You're going to have a sense of hyper situational awareness to the point of paranoia. You need to know what every sound is around you, what's normal and what isn't. So when you hear that rustling of the leaves, is that a deer or is that an enemy soldier moving through some dry leaves? That little smacking sound, like something hitting the ground that you hear. Well, is that a squirrel dropping a nut from a tree? Or is that an enemy soldier dropping down into position to get a bead on you to open fire? Now, as a part of a small group, 2 or more, someone always has to be on guard duty 24/7. You always have to have someone awake and alert and observant. So if you're part of a 2-person team, 1 person would sleep, the other person is awake, and you swap out. Now if you're part of a small group, 3 to 6, you're always going to have at least 1 person out on sentry duty, on LPOP, listening post observation post, and they need to be as far out as you realistically can push them, and that they'll be able to get the information to you, alerting you that the enemy is approaching and giving you enough time that you can grab your stuff and get the hell out of Dodge. So that may mean you're going to need some type of communications, radio, field telephone, bird calls, whatever you decide, and come up with a standard in your unit on that for alerting your element. Now, if you're an individual, you obviously cannot stay awake 24/7. So part of that, your hide position, your base camp needs to be extremely well camouflaged, hiding your heat signature, your visual, everything, so that the enemy can literally walk right past it, right next to it, and not even see you are there or your equipment is there. You need to make sure to keep any cook fires small, hidden in the ground. Dakota smoke holes are your friend for preparing your food. And as soon as you're done, the food's prepared, you cover up that hole, grab that food, move to another location to eat it. because that ground's still going to be warm for a little bit. It can be picked up on a thermal. You're also going to have to be extra paranoid when it comes to light, even the smallest light. Red lens flashlight, only on when you need it in the middle of the night. Quick flash what you need, turn it off. Don't leave it on. Noises, if you snore, I don't know what to tell you. There's no real way to cover that up. Not unless you sleep near something that will somewhat cover up the noise. Say relatively close to a roadway where the sound of tires on the hardball, on that asphalt or concrete may cover it up. Or the sound of a waterfall may cover it up, or the sound of a rushing river, rapids may cover it up. Get creative. Look at your area, what's realistic. Now you're going to want to put out early warning devices and booby traps, especially in the areas you cannot keep good eyes on. That ravine that's off in the distance that you think is too far out, you cannot keep eyes on. Maybe you want to put a booby trap or two down in there. And make sure that it will cause such a great of an injury on the enemy that they will yell out at the top of their lungs, warning you. Make sure that that warning device will be loud enough you will be able to hear it even in your sleep, when you get the chance to sleep. Going along with this, you need to always be packed. Only take out what you need at any given time. Use it. As soon as you're done with it, pack it right back up. So that you can grab your stuff, get up, and take off in a moment's notice. Because more than likely, the stuff you have sitting out, when the enemy approaches, it's going to end up getting left behind because you need to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. Only take out what you need for that particular moment, then clean it up, pack it back up. Now, you're probably going to want to move more often than would be normal. How often? That's really going to be situational dependent and up to you. You may stay in an area only for a few hours, or you could be in that area for a day or two and then move. Whatever is safest for you. But understand this, constant movement does get noticed. You need to take into account what type of reconnaissance and surveillance capabilities the enemy has. Now, they may have a surveillance satellite up in orbit that can read small print over a person's shoulder as they're sitting down in a big crowded city or underneath the leaves of a tree. But realistically, would they devote that to you? Are you enemy number one to an entire nation that would justify taking that asset and devoting it to find just you? So, more realistically, what will the enemy deploy against you? They're going to deploy ground sensors. They're going to deploy surveillance teams, recon teams, security patrols to locate you. Likely they will deploy drones because those are getting to be a lot cheaper and a lot more common. We're seeing that in Ukraine. Even off-the-shelf civilian drones are being used in combat operations against another country. You need to take into account that your enemy, if they're a modern military, probably has thermal capabilities. So they can read that body heat, so you need to find a way to mitigate it. Don't ask me how to make a poncho or a suit to hide your heat signature. That is outside my realm of capabilities. There are lots of videos on that stuff out there. S2 Underground is a good channel. You could go check him out. I think he did a video or two on that subject. Now, because you're potentially by yourself in a small group, you're not going to have the combat trains, the supply train with you that you would if you were part of a platoon or a company. You're not going to have a person to spare to drive a vehicle loaded with supplies. You're not going to have a fire team that can pull carts behind them or sleds behind them loaded down with nothing but supplies. So especially if you're an individual, cache, cache, cache. Get out as many of them as you can across your anticipated area of operations. And if you're an individual, think of them small. Do you want a cache that will have what you need, that you can get up to, open it up, pull everything out of it, pack it in your bag, close that cache back up, recamouflage it, and move out of that area in a matter of a couple minutes? You don't want multiple large caches that your enemy is going to find after you take out just a few items, and then you camouflage it back up so that you can come back later and reuse it. You don't want a cache so large that your enemy is going to find it and they'll capture half your supplies or 3/4 of your supplies in that particular area. Small batches, spread out, shotgun scattered. I am considering doing some experiments on this and potentially doing another logistics video on caching, smaller cache, what should you maybe think about putting in it that you can resupply yourself, sustain yourself for another period of time till you would make it to the next cache location or whatever's required. Now, you must always, when you are part of a small group or an individual, or just in general if you're in resistance operations, avoid civilians as much as possible unless required. Okay, you must always be aware. The enemy will have spies. The enemy will have people that will tip you off so that they can get money, or they can get food, or they can get favors from the government that's in control. Always be aware that that's going to be there. There's always going to be fifth columnists. There's always going to be quislings. Good example on this, or something for you to visualize it. Those of you that have seen the Harry Potter movies, I think it's Deathly Hallows. The last couple movies of the series, one of them you have the Harry and his two friends go to track down a fellow classmate from their school. They get to the house for this classmate and she isn't there. The father says, "Oh, she's out, she'll be back later." He invites them in, gives them a cup of tea, a little bit of food, answers their questions and that stuff. Well, unbeknownst to them, the daughter, the student that they came to see, had been captured by the, the Death Eaters, and was being held hostage. And they left the father there to pass information for if or when Potter and his friends showed up. And that's exactly what he did. When they showed up, he made the signal that, hey, they're here. That type of situation does happen. I know people won't want to admit it, but guess what? The U.S. did it in Iraq and Afghanistan. Take people into quote-unquote protective custody and hold them as leverage for others to pass on information. Now, what about actual operations? We've talked about the survival part, how you can last longer. What can you do to actually fight, cause some pain on the enemy? Except that you're not going to cause so much damage that will bring about the end of the war quickly. Okay? You are a mosquito trying to bite an elephant. Especially if you're doing this as an individual. So you need to think of guerrilla warfare, sniping, IEDs on convoy routes. If the enemy has a particular route that they patrol, or is like when they're moving into an area to patrol, you know that they're probably going to head this direction. Put a couple booby traps in ahead of them. Sorry, I had to burp there. You want to cause them pain. You want to cause them injuries. A wounded soldier takes more soldiers off the battlefield than a dead one. You kill an enemy soldier, one person leaves the battlefield. You wound an enemy soldier, at least 3 are going to be going off the battlefield. Because you're going to have that wounded soldier and then 2 people to carry him out. That moves the numbers greater into your favor. Hit and run. Hit your enemy fast, violent, spray them down, take out the important people inside a patrol that you can identify, toss a couple grenades, break contact, relocate farther down. When they get up to you again, hit them again, over and over and over. Attacks and raids on outposts and that stuff, not likely. Even a traffic control point is probably going to be outside your capabilities. So about all you can do, harassment, sniping. Maybe for an attack against a larger installation, if you have the capabilities, you have the equipment, hey, that timed rocket attack. Set up a barrage of them, whatever you have you're capable of doing. Aim it at the enemy outpost, set the timer, get the hell out of the area, sit back and watch those rockets go off and hit that base. Get an idea on some of the things that I've mentioned over the years here could potentially still be used even by an individual or a small group to hit your enemy. Basic guerrilla warfare. Now, it's not likely an individual is going to take on a squad or larger, wipe them out, and then be able to walk off with all their gear. So what can you do? You need to resupply yourself. You're running low. Well, have yourself concealed. All right, the enemy's moving through the area. You see it, put yourself in a hide position where you can watch them. Hopefully close enough that they can literally walk past you and not notice. Have an idea of how many people are in that patrol. And when that last person comes up to you or comes past you, have a look. Is that person paying attention? Are they focusing just to the back? Are they focusing just to the front? Is the person in front of him looking back, keeping watch on him? Take all this into consideration. Then, when the enemy is there, become that trapdoor spider. Pop out of your hide silently, take them out. Put that garrote around their throat, tighten it, pull it, use their body weight to snap their neck, to choke them. Plunge that knife up in the side of their neck, angle it upwards so that it goes up right along the spinal cord, up into the opening at the base of the skull to sever the spinal cord between the vertebrae and the skull. Get it in there into the arteries, slit it, slice it open. They bleed out. Keep your hand over their mouth so they don't talk. Crank that neck back, open that wound up even more so the blood just sprays out quickly. Flip them over, take what you need and can off of them, put it in your pockets, inside that dump pouch, whatever you have. Leave the body there and get the hell out. Maybe booby trap the body. That might actually be a video I could consider doing, is booby trapping bodies. Some of the techniques that have been done over the years. I'm still debating that one. So, but it's going to be shoot and move, hit and run, live to fight another day. If the enemy comes in, they're too aware, they're too large, let them pass. You don't have to shoot at every single enemy that comes within range. Your survival is more important so that you can take advantage of the situation when it's in your favor, when the enemy least expects it. Like that enemy patrol has been out humping the boonies for days. They've been out a week, 2 weeks. They're tired. They're essentially sleepwalking on their patrol. Well, when they finally get down into that patrol position at night, set up for their ambush, set up for their night camp, you slip in through the perimeter, steal what you need, kill a few people any way you can, slip back out. Fear is your friend. When you're a small group or an individual, intimidate the hell out of the enemy. If you succeed in taking out a patrol, they had tracking dogs with them. Guess what? Behead that fucking dog, put that head on a goddamn pike, gut the son of a bitch right then and there, leave a pile of guts and fur laying on the ground, take the carcass with you, and cook it up over a spit and have yourself some nice fresh meat. Those of you that have problems with eating dogs, realize you're probably going to end up in a situation where that's the only way you're going to survive, because you don't have the support and you can't go to the civilian population for supplies because you don't know if that farmer you go to is going to tip someone off or his kid is going to. Intimidate the hell out of the enemy. When you're part of a small group or an individual, you're a guerrilla team behind the lines, no one to help you out, prisoners will be a problem. How do you handle it at that situation? Well, things happen when a person throws up their hands, they're trying to surrender. They may accidentally catch a bullet in the forehead. Get the idea? You're not executing a prisoner per se. They're still a combatant. They're starting to give up. Well, now you don't have to deal with the prisoner, and there's no one left alive to pass on intelligence about you to the enemy, to let his commanding officer know during the debriefing that, hey, there was only one of them, or there was only 4 of them, or there was only 5 of them, or there was only 2 people. Get the idea? Use fear against your enemy. Get them so paranoid, so scared that they will refuse to go out on a patrol. Have an area that's basically, that is a death zone. Any unit that goes in there dies. They die from booby traps. They die from snipers. They die from mines. Someone walks off from a patrol to take a piss. They just stepped a couple feet into the woods. He doesn't come back, even though he's only 6 feet away. They go look for him. They find him laying on the ground with his throat cut open and his dick shoved in his mouth. Fear, intimidation is your friend, especially when you're a small element dealing with a larger force. Embrace it, use it. Hopefully this gives you somewhat of an idea, gets you thinking in that direction, how you can do this. Remember, small teams do get used in the military. LRP teams, long-range reconnaissance patrol teams, which are now known, I think, as LRS, long-range surveillance teams. You also have scout sniper teams, 2-man teams that move around on a battlefield, take out targets, disappear, survive to fight another day. That's the type of stuff you need to copy. That mentality. Only fight when you have the advantage. If you don't have the advantage, you melt away, you disappear, you hide. Let the enemy pass, maybe harass them a little bit, and that's about it. Something that would be a good thing to have if you're going to be in this situation and you're able to get the stuff. It wouldn't hurt to have that, bag on your side. And inside that bag, well, instead of extra magazines, maybe you have in there those soup cans or those veggie cans with a hand grenade down inside of it. You have tripwire tied to the back of the can that you can quickly tie it off onto a tree or a stake. Or you can just take it, put it between a couple rocks, whatever the situation calls for, and you're able to. You have some tripwire tied around the hand grenade with the end of that tripwire tied up underneath the fuse body, enemies starting to move up, or you need to block off your path behind you. You know, you get that set up in a matter of seconds. Maybe you'll have a couple pre-made stakes in that bag too, in case you need them. Get it in the ground, get it set up, get it camouflaged, get that pin out of it, move out of the area, let the enemy trip it. Things to think about. Are there other things that you can do? Yes, definitely. Do some research. There's more information out there than you realize. And conventional tactics or guerrilla warfare tactics for larger units can be scaled down, can be adapted to suit your situation that you will find yourself in. Never put yourself in a situation where the enemy has the advantage and you are left with only one course of action that you can take. Always have multiple courses of action so that you can switch to whichever best suits the situation at any given moment. And when you're surrounded, you can't get out of there. You're not going to be able to slip through the lines, except you're not going to survive. But make it your goal. The enemy will always have nightmares about you, so that even as they're approaching, their bodies are dropping on the ground. There's a pile of brass and empty magazines around you. It just gets taller and taller. Piles of grenade pins. And then as the enemy's right on you, they see you by yourself. They're trying to capture you. Fucking pull out that knife until you lose the knife in someone's chest. You can't pull it out. Well, then pull the Rick Grimes thing. Bite them in the fucking jugular as they kill you. Rip their fucking throat out. Now, for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot and Militia movements, always remember, essaye ons.